Well, hi, and welcome to another Open Dev Talk. And in this session, we'll show you how to use a new simulation feature in our car simulator. So as you know, we tend to build these Open Dev Talks on top of each other. So we have been going through all the new features we introduced this year, but also one of them was the new car simulator, which we introduced at the beginning of the year. And now, since a few weeks ago, we have a new feature that is then trip simulation, which allows you to simulate going from point A to point B and getting location updates and also mileage updates along the way. So let's jump into the specifics and I'll show you how that works in our platform. To do that, let's open up on the High Mobility platform, the website, as you're familiar with, always the kind of starting point. And from there, I'll go in and hit start on top. You can always create an account if you don't have one already and just sign in. So I've already signed in, so that process is fast. And what I want to do now is I want to work in the simulation studio. So you find it here in our build section, and I have a few simulators here already lined up. And this simulation feature that we introduced exists on all of them. So you can create a new one, but you can also use an existing a simulator, for instance. So I will do that. I will take, for instance, this first one I created. And you can see on top, we have the new kind of functionality, a new button that says simulations. And that is what we've added. And just to recap, we also have then the general kind of capabilities, all the data points that can be changed on the simulator. We have the different events that are not supported for this scene, but we have it for others. And then we have these different scenes for the different manufacturers that can be used. Simulation feature exists on all the different scenes and also across the different scenes. So when you create a new simulation, it will work with all different scenes. So that's universal. So you can always work with those different type of scenarios. To create a new simulation, I go in here, hit create new. I can write something, for instance, to driving around Berlin, for instance, and you can also write a further explanation, like for instance, driving in the city, and then go ahead and create it. And this is the main view that you'll be seeing when you work with this feature. We have here a JSON snippet. I'll get to this one in a second. We got here a copy and paste button. We have a frequency, and then we have a map that kind of shows a preview of how the simulation is being prepared. And what we have chosen to use for building the simulations is GeoJSON. So GeoJSON is an open format for working with coordinates and other type of kind of mapping, positioning, and so on. And we decided to go ahead with this because it's an open protocol and there are a lot of good tools to use with GeoJSON. If you're unfamiliar with it, I would just Google it. You can see here a short description. It's just a format for encoding a variety of geographic data structures. And here we have also another example of how that looks like. So you can always go into more specifics for this, but in reality, the easiest part is just going into any of the existing tools to work with it. So for instance, I can go in and use geojson.io. So geojson.io is a simple kind of visual tool for plotting out different locations on a map and also getting that JSON format right here. And then it can be used with anywhere that GeoJSON is supported, for instance, in our simulations feature. If I want to create this one in Berlin, I go ahead and zoom in. And I can see a map here around city center here, perhaps somewhere around the iconic TV tower. And there are different kind of tools here I can use to create maps. So we have drawings point, we have line strings, polygons, rectangular polygons, circular polygons. So GeoJSON supports all of these different ways. So I can, for instance, draw this and so on, and go ahead and draw them on this map, and it plots out the JSON here. Now, importantly, we decided right now to use line string as the kind of main object to draw journeys, and that's the feature here. If I choose line string, and at its simplest, I can just go ahead on the map and click and create a different journey like this. So every time I click, that's basically what we consider in the trip simulation like a journey update. So if I create this one, every time it jumps to a new one, I get a location update. And now I have drawn a kind of a small journey here in the city center. And it also shows here then all of these coordinates that have been recorded here. Basically that corresponds each one to one of the places on the line. It also says that the type is line string. So currently we work with line string. It's possible that we could add other features in the future. For instance, maybe just markers that you can plot on the map and we could use them. But also to convert between different formats, it's not too tricky. So line string is generally a good way to kind of approach it, and that's what we currently support in the simulation feature. So because I have now plotted this, I can simply go in, hit the copy button, go back to the simulator, delete the existing one and paste in this journey right here, hit save. And as soon as I hit save, you can see we already show a preview of that also in the simulator. So it shows the same kind of trip that I plotted, and each of these dots is an update, basically an update that the vehicle will be transmitting at that point of time. To make it realistic, we also offer the selection of an update frequency. So from 1 second to 120 seconds, and this also corresponds to the update frequencies we have in our production environment for live vehicle data. So in our Airtable, our data catalog, we also show now what type of frequencies are provided by the different manufacturers, and from there you can basically see what is supported and really make a lifelike scenario. And you can also work with kind of real trip data, perhaps that has been collected, and then just import it here. I will show that in a moment as well. So now when I have this saved, I can then choose the location frequency maybe every 5 seconds and hit play. So when I hit play, what happens is that every 5 seconds it updates the location on the map. In the log we see as well that we get the vehicle location webhook triggered by this simulator, but also importantly, all the data is pushed. As in any case, the push mechanism we have today is the most popular way to integrate car data, and we support push to MQTT to S3 buckets. We have OpenDev talks about both of those things, but here we can see that the data is then pushed onto the feed and you would be receiving it. And it continues to play until the end of the scenario that was plotted and continuously produces data. So let's have a look how that what happens in the when you consume the data. So of course it could be nice to see that this data is actually then being pushed and how you would see it if you consume that data. So I'll go ahead and jump back here and then share the same scenario. I would be playing the same scenario, but at the same time I will be sharing my screen for when I show the terminal where I connect with our MQTT client. So let's do that. Here we go. I got here my MQTT client connected. I just go ahead and hit enter. And already I can see lots of data coming in, because basically also in MQTT I get retained messages. So I get everything I missed since my last connection is replayed. That's what I was seeing right now. But for to see it in real-time action, I just clear the screen. So now it's completely dark, and I go back and I hit play on the simulation feature. I just change the frequency to every second, hit play, and now I should start seeing also the same data that's being generated by the simulator coming in here over MQTT. So let's see if that happens. There we go. Here we go. So here we can now see all the location updates also coming in here. Every second, and it still continues to come in right now. So there is a small latency, a few seconds just in the sandbox to kind of produce this data, but we can see all of this is coming in, the coordinates, and also then the mileage that is being updated as well. So the mileage, as you can see, is increasing here by the decimals, and so that's an automatic feature. As you can see that in the simulator itself, we just update the location. That's all that you need to enter. But at the same time, in the during the simulation feature, we calculate the mileage basically. So of course, this is not always 100% accurate, but for the simulation feature, it works great. You don't have to configure anything. You just get the mileage automatically calculated. So both of those data points are pushed automatically. So that's a way to build a simulation from scratch. But of course, in more advanced scenarios, after you testing it out, you might want to also see that this works with real trips. And if you have been working with our live scenario or with live vehicle data, you probably have some data already you could use. It's pretty easy to export any type of location data into GeoJSON and to get it formatted like this, even from a CSV or an Excel file, it's no problem at all. And we also plan to share more of the different example trips that you can use to include in your simulator. So I go back here and let's create something new. So I'll create something more realistic scenario. So maybe a longer scenario, driving from let's say Netherlands, driving from the Netherlands to Germany. Let's go ahead and create this. So we start from again clean from scratch, and I have one trip prepared. So you can see this is almost 600 rows of code. So a lot of different location updates. If you go ahead and plot this, I can also see that this is a trip that took place from Netherlands around The Hague and going then downwards into Germany, ending up in Cologne. So quite a long trip. And you can see that this is actual data that's being produced. So on the highway, every few minutes, a location update was being shared from the vehicle. So it was every 2 minutes. So we can also update it here and hit save. And in total, if you run this simulation, you see it takes 4 hours and 22 minutes. So quite a long simulation that you could keep running and producing data for over MQTT and anywhere, or you could also consume it through the REST API, for instance. So if I would hit click play, now it already did one location update, and it's of course being pushed here, as you can see, onto the MQTT feed everywhere else, and then it keeps going. And of course, now if we wait 4.5 hours, it's a bit too long for this live session. So for the sake of simplicity, I just put 1 second. So now if I hit play, every second it starts to do one location update. It updates the mileage, it updates the location, and it goes on so pretty quickly here on the map. So, and if I would zoom in even more, you can really see that the location updates are pretty on spot on the highway. It's driving on the left lane on the highway and going southwards towards Germany, so making quite big progress. So a pretty simple way to replay now a trip that actually took place, and that can be used then in different testing scenarios or just to produce data to your test environment. And it goes on. And so this is just one of the trips that we'll also share for you to test it out yourself if you would like to. So hopefully this feature comes handy. It's also something that you can work with in a quite seamless way, because you can also even just hit play and then move around anywhere else in the simulator. So you can still work with other actions in parallel. That means that the play is you can see the location updates going in, but I can still go in and here and change some other settings in my simulator. For instance, you can see location updates are coming in, odometer options are coming in here. So even though yet we don't support other properties being changed in a journey simulation, I could do that manually if I'm interactive. So I could change the fuel level to 18%. And of course, that is also then broadcast and pushed onto the feed. And I could also try to do change different attributes as well. For instance, maybe a warning light or tire pressure changing on the vehicle during a drive. And that would also then be mixed into the journey simulation data that is being broadcast and pushed to your services. So that's the kind of simulation feature. Hopefully it's helpful. But let's then look at the kind of last things to mention here, because one of the things worthwhile to mention is that we did have a simulations feature before. So in our old emulator or car simulator we had years ago, so we did have the simulation feature, but it was a bit complex to set up. So we hope that this kind of new format of just using GeoJSON is much simpler. And one of the benefits is that this is also running in a bit different architecture, meaning that it's not even necessary for this for the browser to be open when you're running a simulation. So for instance, I could go on and hit play on the simulation feature, and if I go and have a look at it, I can see it's running. At the same time, I can just close it down. And even if I close it down, and even if it's now running a simulation for 4.5 hours, which is the actual trip, it doesn't have to be open. So you can just hit play, and then you can close down the browser, or even have it running over the night, or having your systems testing it. And at any point of time, when you go back to the simulator, it shows the progress where it actually is at that point of time. So it has been continuing with this for the last half a minute. It has been continuing with the simulation updates, producing data, and also that data is then being pushed on the MQTT feed. So in the end, however you control the simulation feature here, it's just a control panel, so to speak, because simulations are running in the backend architecture, and the data is being generated and pushed all the time. You could also imagine that you would have maybe 10 different simulations going at the same time in 10 different simulators, and all of them with slightly different trips, and it would really be a good way to get lots of data through a simulated car park, so to speak, generating data for your application, which makes it, again, much easier to try different scenarios compared to manually changing each thing, or sometimes even to connect real vehicles to just get going. So hopefully that will come handy. We've been using this a lot already internally in-house, and I think it's also something that can be really useful for you as you start from your environment and get a bit more advanced, or just want to get some data generated by the simulators pushed to MQTT or to your S3 buckets, or any other streaming capabilities we will be introducing in the future.